Again, thanks everybody for joining. This is the last Unwrapping Chocolatey webinar that we're going to do here in 2025. Next week is Thanksgiving week here in the US. So we are all going to take a nice break and then we roll into December and the holidays, which gets hectic for everybody. So we're going to call it quits for 2025 and then move into 2026 with some new ideas, maybe a different cadence. But looking forward to it. It should be fun. But today, we're going to be talking about something that turned out to be trickier than expected when I initially set out to do this. We're going to talk about deploying drivers with Chocolatey. Um, and I say tricky, and because the ecosystem has changed. So I've been a sysadmin for a long time. I've been doing this stuff for 20 years now, but I've been doing this whole customer success solutions manager, not really a sysadmin thing for a while now. And in that while, since I've really worn that hat, Dell has changed some things around. So I had to completely redo my plans for what we're going to look at today. But I'm happy to say I've got a couple of great things for Dell drivers specifically, and then we'll look at some Lenovo stuff as well. Arguably, Lenovo stuff's better. That's just because the tooling's nicer. Personal opinion, but uh, let's crack on and see what we can get into. So I've got a couple of modules that I've written to make our lives easier as we go through this, and all of this code is going to be up on our GitHub repository at the end of the webinar. We'll put the link and stuff there, and then you'll get an email that's got a link to the GitHub repository and all the resources that we use today as well. So don't panic that you might miss a link here in the chat or anything. You'll get access to the resources that you see here after the fact. But to kick us off and to get started, we first need to import these modules into our session so we have the functions available to us. So we're going to go ahead and do that here real quick. Let's go over here. We're just going to highlight some lines and run that stuff. And then let's just take a look real quickly at what's available in this chocolatey.dell.driver management module that we put together. So clear host and look. Now, arguably, a lot of this stuff is not very useful to the day-to-day management of a driver as a chocolatey package, but it is useful for getting information from driver cab files, etc. So a lot of this is helper functions around kind of understanding what you've got, and then some of it is for actually doing work as well. So one of the first things that you can do is get a catalog folder or file from Dell. Now, this cab file is basically an XML file in a trench coat. It's just a fancy zip file that has an XML file inside of it. And that XML file lays out every model of Dell, laptop, desktop, whatever, that Dell supports, the operating systems that those are supported on, or that is supported on those things, and then underneath that is the various drivers and what their versions are, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a big manifest basically of all the metadata that you need to consume drivers from Dell programmatically. So I've already done some of this work already ahead of this because some of it takes some time and I didn't want to waste time on the webinar. But for the sake of this, the catalog's pretty small. So we can clear that catalog folder out and we can run this code here again. And all this does is it reaches out to the official Dell website to download the latest catalog file from Dell and drops it on disk wherever you tell it to in this destination folder. Now you can specify a specific URL to get a catalog from. Maybe there's a specific catalog that Dell produces that you want to grab. You can do that too. By default, I just get the one that they release every Monday that has the latest driver updates available inside of it. Once you've got that cab file, which again is just a zip file under the hood, we can expand it. So we will expand that cab file And again, then we get that XML file. And just to show you a little bit of what this looks like, I can open this XML file up and we won't spend a great gob of time looking through this thing. But you can see kind of what it looks like. It's relatively difficult to parse if you're just looking at it raw like this. Programmatically, it's a little bit nicer. But this is that catalog file. Another thing that we can do is create a driver pack or get a driver pack out of that XML file. And what a driver pack is a single executable that contains all of the drivers that are the latest version based on the manifest file. Now, I'm not going to run this code because it takes a while to actually download this because it's pretty big. But I've already pre-downloaded it. So if we were to pretend that we ran this and we look at this driver pack folder, you can see that I've got the Latitude 5550 was the model that I cared about, and I wanted the Windows 11 OS, so it's created that, and then inside of there is my executable. This is my driver pack, if you will. Now this one is relatively big. It's a little over 2 gigs, 2.5 gigs, something like that. It's right at the limit of what a chocolatey package supports, without starting to get a little flaky. Uh, Once you reach 2 gigabytes in a nutcase or a chocolatey package, things get unstable. You might have weird errors while it's unpacking itself while you're installing. You might have issues downloading it. We recommend and support packages that are under 2 gigabytes. So in the case of a driver pack like this, where it's large, uh, you'll want to consume that driver pack from a URL. Maybe you've got a raw repository or a generic repository that you can upload this to. Um, a file share is just fine as well. Um, both of those things are totally valid and will keep the chocolatey package side, the actual chocolatey package itself, really, really tiny. When you don't bake binaries into a chocolatey package and it's just scripts, they usually zip to around um, I don't know, 10K or something like this. Um, and just I want to pause real quick and mention while I'm starting to go through all of this stuff and we start to see demos and examples and stuff flying across our screen, there is a Q&A section in the bottom of your window down where the like chat and participants and all that stuff is in the bottom of the Zoom window. There should be a Q&A button. If you got a question at any time through this, let me know. You can post your question in there. I've got James Ruskin, my solutions engineer. He's on hand, kind of hiding in the background today, going to look at those Q&A questions for me. You try and answer those as they come through, and I'll pause a little bit later to check and see if he's marked any for me to answer live. Maybe we need to dive into something, but just so you're all aware, there is a way to ask questions, and James can field those for you as we go through here. Um, but this is getting a driver pack. Like I said, it takes a while to download this just because it's so big. So I'm not going to bother. I've pre-done that work here. But what we can do is get drivers from the cab file itself as well. So if we were to look at this catalog file again in a different light, and this one I will actually do because this one doesn't take uh, quite as long to do as the other one, and we are running fairly well on time. So we will actually show what this looks like on this one. So I'll hit F8 on this, and it will do what it needs to do. And you can see here, this one is only about a gig, so it doesn't take a super, super long time to download. Thankfully, I have decent internet here in my home office. So while this is waiting, and just to explain the difference, the manifest file provides both the ability to download that kind of all-inclusive driver pack, or it also includes the ability to download the cab file, which will be expanded, and that will include all the individual drivers. So once you expand the cab file, there are folders for, and we can see it here if we dive in, and it's kind of doing its thing still. Um, but you can see the folders for the individual types of drivers start to flow in here, and I'll know it's done once I get my prompt back. There we go. So now we've got, and I apologize, the folder structure for this is a little wonky, but you kind of have to live with it a little bit because it's based on what the cab's going to give us. Um, so this is extracting the drivers themselves, the individual drivers from this cab file into a latitude 5420. So this is the model for this particular one. And again, it goes a level deeper. It has some duplicitous stuff, but we specifically ask for Windows 10 and Windows 11 drivers here. There are only Windows 10 drivers available for this Latitude 5420. It's an older model. Um, so we've got our Windows 10 drivers. They're 64-bit drivers. And then if we dive into the actual folders, these are raw drivers. These are not like there's an executable in here that you run. These are INF files. Um, this is meant to be used with something like SCCM and doing drivers that way, where you can say, hey, here's a bunch of drivers, go make them so on this group of machines. Some folks on the call here may be familiar with that methodology. You can do the same kind of thing as a chocolatey package. So what we'll do later when we actually get to creating packages is we'll use a bunch of different templates to do these driver installs a bunch of different ways. In this way in particular, all we're going to do is use PnP util to load the drivers, install the drivers onto the operating system. All of this stuff is going to require a reboot. We're messing with drivers after all, but it works fine. So that is getting a driver from a cab. Now, I've also um, already taken the liberty of setting up a ProGet instance. So if we were to go here and look at my ProGet instance, I've set up a couple of feeds. I've got a webinar feed specifically, and then I've also got a asset folder that I've created, and I've already pre-uploaded this driver pack that we downloaded earlier, this 7450 driver pack in this example. So what we're going to do here is now that we've downloaded the driver pack previously and uploaded that driver pack to a place where a chocolatey package can consume it from, I'm going to go ahead and create a chocolatey package for this driver pack. Now, what I'm going to do here are a couple of things. I'm going to give this particular driver pack an ID, and I'm going to name it something that kind of makes sense. And I actually have logic built into this new Dell driver package function that ensures that I use .driver as the suffix for my package ID. And I do that because I want to be very clear when I'm looking at my list of packages in my repository or when I'm doing Choco search. Uh, Anytime I see a .driver as a package ID, I instantly know what that package is doing. It's installing a driver. The same way that we use the .extension package for installing Chocolatey extensions. If you see a .extension, you kind of just that's what that package is doing. Or on the Chocolatey community repository, you might have seen .install or .portable, where .install packages typically run a system-wide installer, and a .portable package includes a version of the software that doesn't need installation. It's a standalone executable, maybe, or it can run self-contained without actually installing onto the system. So it's just leaning into the chocolatey ecosystem and nomenclature that we're used to using, or at least if you've been using chocolatey for a while, you've seen quite a bit of this nomenclature stuff, so you should be a little bit used to it. It's just leaning into that to make it easier to identify packages just by seeing what the package ID is. In this particular case, I need a driver pack. This can be either a URL or a file path, UNC path. This template is for Dell driver pack. Now, I do some fancy stuff inside of this function where if you give me a URL, I'm going to use the Dell driver pack. If you give me a local file, which we'll see later, I changed this template on the fly, kind of behind the scenes programmatically to uh, use a different template that points to a different chocolatey helper function because we don't have to download anything. We can just point to the file. So one uses install chocolatey package, the other uses install chocolatey install package. Slightly different names, big difference in what they do. The one downloads a file and then installs it or runs it. The other just runs it from wherever you've told it it's at. So there's no download mechanism there. Um, where am I going to store the package? We're going to store it here. And then do I want to compile the finished chocolatey package into an upkeg? Yes, I do. So I'm going to set that flag as well. And we'll go ahead and we'll run this block of code here. Now this is going to take uh, just a minute and just so we can see there's no smoke and mirrors. Um, I do have that Dell thing here. There's this Dell Latitude folder, and then once it packs the package, we'll get our finished chocolatey package here. And as you can see, because we're just using a URL and we don't actually have the file inside of the package, this finished chocolatey package is only 3K. Super, super tiny. Um, and if we look at the install script, the template and the function goes ahead and it makes sure that everything is good to go in terms of passing the URL into the file and also the checksum for the file as well. And then um, there are a couple of silent arguments that we use to actually install that driver pack onto the system, and those are specified in there as well. So if you want to install a driver pack where you've got one executable, it includes all the drivers that are up to date for that particular, maybe it's month, whatever cadence you're going to do it, however you name the packages, whatever that is for you. This is a way that you can install all of those drivers in one shot using a chocolatey package. Um, I will preface and say this should work according to all the documentation. I do not have the ability to test any of this because I do not have a Dell system. So while the audio driver I know works because I have the exact same audio driver needs in my Lenovo, I can't guarantee that everything works perfectly, but I don't see why it wouldn't because the one does. So your mileage might vary. Use this stuff, um, but you may need to tweak maybe a template or something like that. Just because I couldn't 100% verify that everything is good to go, but I did my absolute darndest to make it and to make it work. Um, Again, the same thing for a local file. It's doing the exact same thing, but this is just putting a different kind of spin on it, just to show that you can use that same Dell driver pack and it does a different thing if it's a local file. And where did I put that uh, folder at? Let me go grab that quickly. It stick around. with me 1 second. There it is. And that second package was the mem card reader package. So if we look at this one, let me go back one folder here. You'll notice that the size is much bigger on this one. That's because we actually uh, put the file inside of here. So we've copied the actual driver uh, into this this package. Now this one is a little different in that also it didn't come from the actual driver pack. This is just one that I have downloaded. Like I went to support.dell.com, picked a laptop, said show me all the drivers and give me the audio one. It comes back as a standalone executable. So that's what this memory card reader is. And that's how I've created that here. And you'll notice that this one, same silent args, but instead of downloading a URL, we use a file, and there's a checksum again, and it's got that different helper function that we're using as well. This also works. I had this exact same Realtek memory card in my Lenovo, uh, actually. So this is one I've tested. This works. I know the silent args are good for these standalone executables. You should have no problem with those if you're in a Dell shop as well. But just letting everybody know, I wasn't able to fully test everything that we're showing off on the Dell side of things today because we're not a Dell shop. We have Lenovo kit. Now, same thing from a Dell manifest. Um, you can specifically grab different categories of drivers out of there and then um, create a package that only includes those things. So from this cabinet folder, if we look and we drive inside of here, uh, any of these you could pull in. So if you only want to update the audio and the chipset drivers, you can have those. If you want just the network or storage drivers, you can do that. It's really super flexible to be able to package what you want. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And I need to stop closing this folder and just minimize it. There we go. So this one is at 5420 Windows 10 drivers here. And it's currently packing all its stuff. It's got a bunch of stuff it needs to copy. But this one, if you'll notice, it's got a repository folder, and that's where we shove all the drivers. And then the install script, this is where we use that PNP util stuff. We just loop through all of those folders that we have and load the drivers in. And again, this works fine. I was able to find one that had the correct audio drivers. It works. Minimize, not close. There we go. I'm going to pause for a second and check the Q&A, and then we will talk about Lenovo stuff for a few minutes. Let's see. Now, I don't know what the full context is for this question, Brandon. So it seems like there was some feed. You probably had a question that you already got answered, and this is just feedback off the top of it. So there we go. And where do we grab these functions? Um, I do not have comparable functions for HP, David. So his question was, where do we grab these functions? And are there comparable functions for HP? No, I only did Dell and Lenovo. But if you dissect what I'm doing inside of these functions, you can probably pretty quickly put together the same sort of thing for HP stuff if you're an HP shop. The like I said at the beginning, maybe you joined a little bit late. You'll get an email after this webinar concludes. And inside of that email will be a link to a bunch of resources. One of those links is the GitHub repository where all this stuff is going to be able to be found. So you will be able to get all the code that you're seeing me run today from that GitHub repository after the webinar is over and we send the uh, follow-up email. So, alrighty, I think that covers questions for the minute. And let's go to Lenovo stuff. So I don't have a clear host on that. So let me just clear my screen and let's check out what we have available for managing Lenovo stuff. Um, Lenovo stuff is much nicer to do with PowerShell and Chocolatey because Lenovo actually publishes a PowerShell module called lenovo.client.scripting that has a bunch of helper functions inside of it for doing things like finding your machine codes or finding your models or looking for drivers, etc. So one of the things that is very important is Lenovo ties driver availability to a machine code, not a model, like a friendly name. So, for example, I have a ThinkPad P16 G2. I can't find drivers for a Lenovo ThinkPad P16 Gen 2. A P16 Gen 2 is actually a 21FA right here. So I can find drivers for a 21FA machine. So if I were to do that, let's find all the drivers that I currently have available for my machine. Now you can see there are 44 of them that came back. And this is for my particular machine code. I only want drivers. If you leave off the update type, you'll get available applications and firmware as well. That's why this list looks a little bit smaller than the 44 total items that it said I had, because I'm filtering some stuff out. I'm only looking for drivers in this instance, and I only want Windows 11. So this get available Lenovo driver function is a wrapper around the find Lenovo updates function that allows me to filter things easier. So I look for the machine code because that's what that the Lenovo function wants. But then I filter on drivers, operating system. You can do reboot type and severity as well, but I didn't bother here. But you can do a whole bunch of stuff, and the help will have a whole bunch of examples as well if you want to run get help on any of the functions. And then to make it a little more readable for the screen here today, I've set format table at the end so we get a nice table output. Um, you can also look by model. So this will, um, I said that, hey, you can only look for drivers by machine code. Well, that sucks because you might know what model you have, but you're not going to know what all those machine codes are. So I've made it easy with available Lenovo driver to just give me the model you have or models. You can do more than one. And I will, on the back end, figure out what the machine codes are, find the drivers and return all the drivers for you. So here, if we clear the screen, this ThinkPad X1 Carbon had 45 things available. And again, I'm only looking for the Windows 11 drivers. So it includes all of the things. So if we look, like, here's firmware, this one's a firmware. And I saw some BIOS in there and some other things. So you can get all kinds of things. Now let's create a driver package for Lenovo stuff. So what we can do um, is say get Lenovo driver for my laptop. Again, this 21FA. We're going to get the drivers, and I only want the audio driver. I only want to create a package for the audio driver, and I want Windows 11. So I'm going to very specifically say this is the Lenovo November audio driver package, and I'm going to use this update metadata as my update data, and I'm going to store it in the C Lenovo repository folder. So if I come in here and I hit F8, and let me go ahead and pop this back, and let me go to the Lenovo repository folder. There's my Lenovo audio driver, and there's my package. It'll fill itself out here in a second. There we go. So Lenovo audio driver. If we look inside of here, there's my install and my helpers. And inside of the repository folder is where I shove everything. Now, what you can do is instead of doing just a single driver, maybe you want to do all of the drivers. Well, I'm not going to do all of the drivers in this particular instance. I'm just going to create um, packages for the first three drivers that get returned for my particular machine. And I am going to say, well, I want to programmatically generate all these packages. So I'm going to use information from the metadata to help me. So I'm going to pull the ID off of the update, off of the package object, and use that for my package ID. I'm going to grab the version off of the object from the update variable here, and I'm going to grab the name and set that as my title. And then I'm going to put them in this C repository folder as well. So what I can do there, let me make sure that I grab everything correctly, and we will run that. And it's going to go find all my stuff. And I have closed that folder yet again. Let's just look. So inside of here, we should start seeing some weird folder names crop in. Now that's, I know, not super, super helpful, right? Like, what the heck is this? I have no idea. Um, couldn't even begin to tell you unless I start to come in here and dive in and read the new spec file, and only then am I able to start figuring things out. The new spec will have the title in it, and you can find out from there. But I have a solution to this, and we'll move move on to that next as soon as this is done, and it looks like it is. So before we do that, just to show you kind of doing everything, and this is going to take, what did I do? I said first three, so I don't know which one of these are going to repeat themselves. So I'm going to delete those real quick. Um, and just to show you that I want all of the drivers, but I only want certain categories of drivers. You can do that as well. So audio, storage, networking, all that stuff. Let's go ahead and grab those things. And then once this is done, we'll start to make it easier to consume these packages. We don't have to worry about um, all these weird names anymore. If I'm going to create a bundle of packages that I want to install all at one time, I can lean on Chocolatey to do that for me. So instead of relying on, tooling from the vendor to create these driver packs or whatever, I can lean on Chocolatey to do the same thing in potentially a more sane way. So by looping over the repository. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to kill this Dell folder out of here real quick so we don't confuse ourselves. Um, I'm going to loop over this repository folder and I'm going to find all of the nupkeg files that are in that folder and I'm going to grab just the name. So just what you see here. That's all I care about. And I want to grab those things from the C repository folder here. And the meta package that I'm going to create is going to be created in the same location. So it's going to be in that C repository path. And I'm going to call this package Lenovo-webinar.drivers. So that's going to be the friendly name for this package. I know exactly what this package is going to do in that it's going to install all the drivers that I've made during the webinar. And that meta package needs some information outside of the ID. It needs a version, which I'm not putting here. There's a default value of I think 010 on the function. So you could come in here, and version it. So if I wanted to, I could come in here and say version. What's the date today? 2025 dot 20 dot 20.11. I could do that if I wanted to. Not going to, because I like to not feed the demo gods if I don't have to. So I know this works. So that's what we're going to do. But that is valid. So what we'll do is just run this. And what it actually is going to do behind the scenes is it's going to take all these nupkegs that I've found here and it's going to make them or mark them as dependencies. And it does some pretty cool stuff. So let me see if I can't um, dive in here. Let's actually open this new spec file. And I knew that was going to do that. Let me see if I can drag it over here. Well, why won't you open? Another instance, I'll just open you in Notepad. Here we go. So meta packages, for those that aren't familiar, are packages that don't include any scripting. So there's no tools folder, there's no chocolate install.ps1, there's no chocolate uninstall.ps1. It's just a new spec file that defines dependencies. So when I want to make a meta package of all of the Lenovo drivers that I want to bundle together, maybe you make a monthly driver pack yourself. What I can do is bulk download all the drivers that I care about to a location and then go fetch just the names of all the nupkegs from that location and then using the power and magic of regex figure out what my dependency ID is and the version. So if we were to look at, and let me close this. So if we were to look at this repository folder and look at a nupkeg, we can see that everything before the first period is the ID of the package, followed by a version number, followed by the extension .nupkeg. So with some regex, you can say, hey, give me everything before the first period, and then give me everything from the first period to the last period. That's my version number. Then this is my dependency. I've got my ID and my version number. And it's important that you have that version number defined in your new spec, the way I've defined it here. Because in Chocolatey 2.x or in Chocolatey 2.0 and higher, we've introduced the ability for Chocolatey to work with NuGet v3 feeds. And NuGet v3 feeds will not find a dependency if there is no version number associated with the dependency. So if you just have dependency ID equals foo and no version number, and you go to install whatever package it is that has that dependency will not be installed if you're using a v3 feed. So I'm very specific that I make sure that I have both my ID and of my version number in the new spec file when I create this meta package so that I can guarantee that when you go off and you do this on your own and you install it or you install one of these driver packages, it works. Because if it doesn't work, that makes all of us look bad. You because the driver package didn't work, and me because I gave you a thing that didn't work, so you were destined to fail. So that's why. ID version, very important to have both when you're working with dependencies inside of a new spec file. That is, I believe, all of the demo stuff. Now, there are a couple of things that I haven't done. I have this bulk create.ps1 file that basically you can provide. This is what you'll use for automation. This is the script that you could say, hey, every Monday or every Tuesday or every third Friday or whatever schedule your little heart desires, go out and fetch me all of the drivers for various machine types. This accepts an array. So if you know you've got 21 FAAs and 2 NKYs and whatever else machine types, go out and give me all of those drivers or whatever update types you specify. Um, if you don't know machine types, you can also give me just a list of models. And same thing, it'll go out and it'll fetch all the drivers for those specific models. Um, and then again, you can say, I want Windows 11 only. Maybe I've still got some Windows 10 that I need to phase out, but they're still around. So give me those drivers as well, et cetera, et cetera. This is the script that you can take and plug into things like PowerShell Universal or Jenkins, or maybe you've got a local GitHub action runner that you want to use, or an Azure DevOps pipeline, or whatever. Anything that can run PowerShell can do this step, can download the drivers. Um, Now, you'll also want to make sure that if you're using bulk create.ps1 here, you are using a machine or running the script where a copy of Chocolatey for Business is installed. That way you have the package builder stuff and all those needed tools to actually make the packages. So I'm gonna nuke this out and then I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna run this and it's gonna create um, all the drivers for all the things. And this is gonna take a little while uh, to run. Um, and I think while that's running, there are at least one question. If anybody else has any other questions, I'm checking them out now. So get them in, and we will try to get them answered. Lenovo. So this is from Vlad. He says Lenovo also publishes Lenovo System Update tvsu.exe, but we've been having issues with it as late. Would managing with Chocolatey and the Lenovo module be a potential replacement for that? Absolutely, yes, it will, because using a Lenovo system update is what I wanted to initially do, and found it to be incredibly difficult. It would not do what I wanted it to do. It was incredibly challenging to get the data I want. It just wasn't great and it wasn't fun. So I took it upon myself to say, I can do better. I can do this better. So I wrote this module, which does functionally the same thing as system update, um, but arguably gives you a lot more control as well because you can be very specific about what models and machine types and drivers and severities and reboot types and all those things that you can do. Um, so I feel like it's a really solid replacement for something like TVSU, but your mileage may vary. Some of you folks watching the webinar today might look at this and go like, yeah, no, I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. And that's fine. At least you learned that this stuff is possible. And maybe you picked up a couple of tips and tricks along the way of different things that you can do with chocolatey packages. That's valuable. So time well spent in my opinion. Now, this is done. So if we look at the repository again, I kind of um, neutered this a little bit to where I only installed three particular um, driver types just because I didn't want it to take forever. Um, but yeah, it's pretty good. Brandon's got another question. He's just popped in here. It says, have you found any issues with doing BIOS updates with this method or issues with BitLocker while trying to update drivers like this? Um, I have not attempted to do a BIOS update as a chocolatey package just because I know how BIOS updates typically behave and want to be done. And Chocolatey does not like to be interrupted in the middle of something for a reboot. It will not pick things back up after the reboot is finished. So while you could do the driver update, if the driver update forces a reboot, you're going to run into a situation where Chocolatey thinks it doesn't have the package installed or the package is in a bad state and your reporting is going to be off. Because when you do a chocolate list and the package isn't there, it's going to be, well, I've got the right version of BIOS, but I don't have the BIOS package and it's a mess. So personally, I wouldn't recommend doing BIOS updates using a chocolatey package. Um, it may work. You might just have to tweak how the reboot is controlled. Um, Again, you'll have all the templates for all of this stuff available after the webinar on the GitHub repository. You can look and see how I've done things um, to control that stuff. But there are additional options that you can use. So maybe for BIOS updates, you want to use a different set of arguments for the package. You would have to modify things on your end to make that happen, but it would be uh, really a simple matter of, and I can even show you. So all of the templates are in the chocolatey folder, and you can even see I have remnants of trying to use Thin Installer from Lenovo for this stuff inside of here. This template folder contains all of the templates that I've used. The Lenovo one, relatively simple. All I do is the the packages, if you look inside of this repository folder, there is an XML file and an executable. The XML file actually contains all of the silent install logic that you need to run the associated executable. So, and that's pretty much all that the TVSU thin installer, like all of those things. This is how they work. They consume the XML file and they run whatever command lines it tells them to run. I just told Chocolate to do the same thing. So in the case of BIOS, there may be additional options inside of there that you can pass, maybe a different string to control the reboots. So it might just be a matter of copying this Lenovo template and changing the install script to do something different. I don't think it would be a crazy amount of work to um, to get a BIOS update to work. I'm real skeptical about it because of the way Chocolatey handles reboots and the way BIOS updates usually typically force a reboot. It's just going to be a bad experience. Um, so I caution you about it. Try it. It may be just fine, and there may be options that make it perfectly fine. But it just makes me nervous, and that's why I never messed with it. Daniel's got another question here. It says, will the email summary of this call include details on how to bulk create these packages via Jenkins? Um, I don't have anything specifically for Jenkins at the minute, but it wouldn't be too hard to throw that into the README of the repository. So yeah, we'll make sure that the bulk creating of stuff in Jenkins is in there. That's not a problem. That's a good shout. All right. I don't think, or I don't see any other questions. I truly thank each and every one of you for joining us on the webinar today. I'm going to pop just real quickly um, a poll up, and let me see, let me find it. So here we go. Let me launch this poll. I'll keep this up till the end of the webinar. This is just, hey, if you liked what you've seen, if you want a demo of Chocolatey for Business for any reason, um, click yes, and we'll send you some information on how to get started with that. No pressure to do that whatsoever. But if you're interested, it's there. By clicking yes, you can let us know that you want it, and we'll follow up with you separate to the update that you'll get with all of the resources. That'll be a very specific email with instructions for you there. Another thing, after the webinar closes, so when you leave, a survey is automatically going to open in your web browser. That's a really quick survey. Basically, it's how did we do on this one, and what would you like to see us do in the future? Uh, we try really, really hard to put webinars together that you guys that come to them want to see. So if there's a particular aspect of Chocolatey that you struggle with or you're not sure about, let us know. We are super excited to put together content to teach you guys about maybe those unknown aspects or those confusing aspects of the product. So that really, really helps me as I'm putting together programming for 2026, kind of steer the ship and know where we need to go. And perhaps, pull other people on to the webinar to get involved as well. So super, super helpful. If you would take that survey, really, really appreciate that. Um, and I think that is it for everybody in the US. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving next week. For everybody outside of the US, I will see you at the next one in 2026. Have a great rest of your day and take care. Bye now.